Good day, everyone. I, James Errol Halimbawa, together with my co-reporters Mr. James Robert Adoan and Ms. Gemma Dumaran, would present the financial management. Now, before we start, I will first define what is financial management framework. Financial management framework is the rule book that defines how an organization makes, approves, and tracks technology-related financial decisions. It moves IT from being a mysterious expense to a transparent strategic asset. In the COBIT 4.1 framework, PO5 and DX6 are two primary pillars of IT financial management. While both deal with money, they operate at different stages of the life cycle, which one handles the planning and the other handles the execution. The PO5, or the Manage the IT Investment, is a process that is part of the planning and organization domain. Its purpose is to ensure that the organization spends its money on the right technology. It also ensures that every IT project supports a specific business goal. It involves establishing the overall IT budget and prioritizing projects based on their expected return on investments. On the other hand, DS6, which is Identify and Allocate Cost, is part of the delivery and support domain. Once the system are built and running, DS6 tracks exactly how much they cost to operate and who is using them. It aims to show the business units the true cost of the IT services they consume. It also involves capturing all costs, including the hidden ones like electricity, floor space for servers, and specialized security staff. So now, let us proceed to investment approval process. It is a critical gatekeeping mechanism. Its purpose is to ensure that every peso spent on technology is justified, strategically aligned, and based on a realistic understanding of cost. On the lower right side of the slide, we can see the investment approval request. To be considered for approval by the IT Investment Committee, a request must include these 6 pillars. In financial planning, the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach is the answer on how a budget or a strategic plan should be built. But most of the successful organizations eventually use a hybrid of both to ensure that goals are both ambitious and realistic. In top-down approach, senior management sets the high-level goals and pushes these targets down to the individual departments. Here, leadership looks at the market conditions, economic trends, and shareholder expectations to set a global budget. This is then allocated to their departments like the IT, marketing, and operations. On the other hand, we have the bottom-up approach, or the operational and participatory. In this model, the process starts at the department or unit level. Managers identify their specific needs, resource requirements, and projected costs, which are then rolled up into a company-wide budget. An IT manager might look at DS6 data to see actual server costs and license fees, then requests a budget based on the specific bottom. In this slide, we can see two different planning models, which is the project planning and the service planning. In IT financial management and governance, planning models are generally divided into these two. Understanding the difference is critical for us in ensuring that an organization doesn't just build a great tool, but can actually afford to keep it running. First, the project planning. Project planning is finite. It has a specific date, an end date, and a defined set of deliverables. It gives focus on capital expenditure. It involves the one-time costs of hardware, software licenses, and the labor required to build or install a system. On the other hand, we have the service planning. Service planning is continuous. It focuses on the long-term life cycle of the technology after the project team has finished their work. This aligns with the DS6. It also gives focus on the operating expenditure, which involves the recurring costs required to keep the lights on. Its key components are maintenance, support, consumption, and recovery.
Thank you, James. So today we're exploring how financial management and auditing intersect within a computer information system or CIS environments. Here I will cover budgeting, pricing models, and the regulatory frameworks that govern them. So when it comes to IT budgeting and variances, we begin with the financial foundation, which is the budget. We have operating budget, which covers daily tech needs like service and project planning, often estimated from historical trends. And capital budget handles long-term assets like software and infrastructure following IAS, GAAP, and IFRS 38 for proper capitalization. We also have here variances. Auditors track these variances as red flags. Volume variances suggest changes in demand or unauthorized usage, while rate variances point to fluctuations in service costs. Once the budget is set, how do we charge it back to the business? We have different pricing models. For models 1 and 2, no or low chargeback, it is treated as central overhead. So for models 3 to 6, they are primarily usage-based. So these link costs to specific IT or business activities, creating a clearer audit trail. For the last model, which is profit-oriented pricing, here IT acts as an internal vendor. Auditors check these models to ensure costs aren't being hidden or artificially inflated. When these services cross borders, they enter the realm of transfer pricing. So ano ba yung mechanism dito? It is that this is the legal process for billing IT services across different tax jurisdictions. So ang regulations natin dito is that we must follow OECD guidelines and Section 482 of the US Tax Code. Mahalaga din na matandaan natin yung arm's length principle. This requires that internal prices match with what an independent provider would charge, preventing tax avoidance. So finally, we look at the how of compliance. We have direct versus indirect charging. So direct charging is preferred for its transparency, while indirect charging uses allocation keys like headcount when direct tracking is too difficult. So ano naman yung benefit test? So here, auditors ensure that every charge provides a specific non-duplicative benefit to the recipient. So, pertaining to the cost contribution arrangements or the CCA, this allows global branches to share costs and risks without a profit markup, ensuring there is a fair and auditable system. So that would be all for my part. I will now give you Gemma for the next topics.
This slide is all about pricing logic, integral versus non-integral services. So in order to know the arm's length price, we need to determine the services whether it is integral or non-integral services. Service is classified as integral if it meets any one of four specific criteria. First, the renderer or the recipient of the services is engaged in the trade or business of rendering or providing similar services to unrelated parties. Second, the renderer provides services to one or more controlled group members as one of its principal activities, meaning the cost of the services provided to related parties during the taxable year exceeds 25% of the total cost of the renderer. Third, the provider is peculiarly capable of the service and it is vital in the operations of the recipient. Peculiarly capable meaning it has competitive advantage wherein the service provider possesses a unique, high-value skill or asset that the recipient relies on to function. The fourth one is the recipient receives a substantial amount of services from one or more controlled group, meaning the cost of the renderer exceeds 25% of the recipient's total deductions. If a service doesn't hit any of these markers, it is labeled as non-integral services. Determining the price for integral services under the Treasury Regulation Section 1.482 states that arm's length charge cannot simply be billed at cost, yet the regulation for services doesn't specify a calculation method. Instead, they use the same methods used for tangible properties such as cap method or comparable uncontrolled price, which is looking for an identical service provided between two independent companies and using that exact price. Second is the cost plus method, taking the total cost of providing the service and adding a markup or profit margin. Third is the resale price method, which is taking the price the service was eventually sold for to an outside customer and subtract an appropriate profit margin to find the internal price. The fourth one is the comparable profits method, or CPM. Instead of looking at the price of a single transaction, you will look at the overall profitability of similar companies in the same industry to see if your margins align. And the last one is the profit split method, wherein you look at the total profit generated by the combined effort and split it based on the relative value of risk each party contributed. The regulations, though, don't rank this in a specific order or preference. Instead, you must choose the best method, which is the one that provides the most reliable result based on the comparability and data quality. Many jurisdictions have established documentation requirements for intercompany transactions, and bawat jurisdiction na yun is meron silang formal service level agreement or SLA and formal invoicing process between entities na dapat align sa SLA nila. The key implementation steps were divided into three logical phases. First phase is the research and analysis. So before making changes, dapat alam ng management nila yung current financial landscape, which involves analyzing the cost or breaking down the internal IT expenses to see where the money actually goes, auditing the present wherein you document the current pricing model, and gathering feedback from the IT service provider and service recipients. Second phase is designing and modeling. This is where you build a new framework, kung saan involved dito yung defining new services na based sa market benchmarks and company goals, building a prototype wherein the management creates a side-by-side comparison ng old model versus the new one, and ensuring data accuracy to make sure the information is reliable and nakakapag-produce ng result on a monthly basis. And the last phase is the approval and rollout, which involves presenting the plan to the CIO, CEO, and CFO para makapag-gain approval and maka-earn ng support, and also pag-formalize ng SLAs and pag-communicate ng new model sa full company. Remember also the golden rule that simplicity and consistency are more important than tweaking for minor accuracy, and it should consider the cost-benefit principle. Under IT asset management, it is the process of monitoring the hardware and software assets to ensure compliance with licensure agreements needed for effective change control and configuration management, and also necessary for developing a pricing model based on the consumption of IT services. Some of the benefits and tools for IT asset management are presented already on the slide. To summarize all, this presentation covers essential frameworks and processes for IT financial management, focusing kung paano minamanage ng organization yung mga investment nila and ina-allocate ng cost. It also outlines the investment approval process kung saan sinisigurado ng IT projects ay aligned dun sa organizational objectives. Additionally, we also tackle the two primary approaches to financial planning, the top-down and bottom-up approach. Along with this, we included the two categories in budgeting, the operating and capital budgets. Moreover, we also discussed the charging and pricing models na nag-state how IT services are built, and lastly, the key pricing classifications that were divided into integral and non-integral services. And that's all for our report, and thank you.